Okay, now let's look at the NSB, the network stage box. In this case, it's an 8.8. And first up, the connections. We have AC power coming in on the left, and then the network cable goes in on the right, and that will either go directly into your StudioLive, or if you're going to network a number of them together, definitely use an SW5E AVB switcher. That way you can have a number of these all over. If you have a large studio environment, you could have one of these in say the vocal booth, maybe a 16.8 in the drum booth, and all of that just gets carried around on a network cable. So just like the EMX that we saw a moment ago, if you plug this in and don't do some specific things in terms of the routing, nothing will happen, right? So what we need to do is go into our old buddy here, which is audio switching and stage box setup. And just like we said before, if you have multiples set up, you'll see them all here. You can identify them by this little light up here. You can see that will identify that this is this box right here. So now let's go and do the easy ones first. The outputs. Where are the outputs going to get their signal from? We said before, if we go into here in digital packaging, AVB sends, right now, channels 1 through 8, everything's married to these particular channels right here. So imagine if you wanted to have your, say, mix 1 through, okay. Imagine you wanted your monitor mixes 1 through 8. That would be 41 through 48, okay? 41 through 48. So if we go back here and set this up to 41 through 48, that means that all of these aux sends over here will be going out of here, which means that this can live on stage and you can send, or there's no more multi-cable long runs, just everything's done with a network cable. So that's the easy one, that's the outputs. Now let's tackle the inputs. And in terms of tackling the inputs, we'd have to talk a little bit about gain structure and the preamp permission. So let's talk about preamp permissions here. When you think about it, this is a network stage box, which means it could live on stage and not just this guy could be connected to it, but maybe your broadcast booth or a monitor booth. A number of people could be listening to the streams that are coming in right here. And generally the rule of thumb is it's best to give one of these devices preamp control, so preamp permission. So if we select over here and select StudioLive, I'm going to apply that. Now what that means is that the preamp in here is only going to be controlled by this StudioLive right here. And what we need to do now is go up to the AVB input streams here. And what are we going to be, how are we going to be bringing in these input streams? So inputs 1 through 8, these are available streams here. If you had multiple boxes, then they would all be down here. So I'm just going to select send 1 through 8, and we're going to go back into the very first input right here. And I have a microphone set up, and lo and behold, you can see that I can clip that. Let me bring that down here. So that's coming in here. I can prove it. I can unplug that. By the way, if you want to plug things in without it popping, hit on the mute, or you can plug that in and then unmute that, and then you should be good. So you can see that this first channel is not getting its input from analog, it's getting it from network. And because we've made a couple of those network setups, then it is listening to this particular box right here. But you could certainly have multiple boxes there. So here's the way you set up your levels. I would probably bump this up, check 2, check 2. Okay, that looks about good right there. So you can see that that's about 52 dB. What I'm going to do now is set up gain compensation on there, and you can see that light up right there. What that means is that now any other any other console that is listening to this stream, remember we did that back in home and audio routing and then AVB input streams. If you were on another mixer and you were setting that up to a mixer that's going to have gain control, then you would select that. You notice that AGC turns off when you do that. I'm going to put that back there. So on another mixer, if you were set up with gain control right there, then here's what happens. With automatic gain control on, imagine if this was a little too loud and I had set levels at my right here, and because the vocalist came in and said, this is my normal volume, and of course when they get excited on stage he starts really getting into it, and then that bumps that up. Here's the deal: if you pull down that gain a little bit, some really cool math will be going on to the other mixers that have signed up for that gain control, that they'll automatically compensate for that. And so it won't affect their gain. The great thing about that is that if you start messing around, because you have preamp control right here, if you start messing around with that, everything downstream of that, to the other mixers that are listening to these streams would be compromised, right? But if they're set up with the gain control, like I said, that stream before, if they're set up with the gain control right there, then any changes you make within reason will be automatically compensated. You bump it down a few dB, and their stream will be bumped up a few dB, so it won't ruin their mixes. Really, really clever. So in a recording workflow, you'll be using some of the same techniques that we saw just a few moments ago, but we'll also look at a few features that might be more suited to this environment. Like the live sound setups, you can definitely make use of the network stage boxes and the ear mixers to get to remote locations such as drum rooms on the other side of a large studio environment. I mean, the fact that you could have 3 or 4 rooms and be able to send audio out to those boxes and receive audio back in that just with a single cable is very, very cool. So check out how to do that, connect those boxes and also the ear mixers in the live sound section that we just finished. But in terms of the recording workflow, let's look at some of the routing.